It's it's 7:08, so I'm going to bring the February 10th meeting of ANC 1A to order. Commissioner Rybarczyk, would you like to take roll call?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Bonneau.
Present.
Commissioner Lehman Morales.
Present.
Commissioner Rybarczyk here. Commissioner Hall. Not present. Commissioner Miller.
Present.
Commissioner Wood.
Present.
Commissioner Gorpade.
Present.
Commissioner Bass.
Present.
Commissioner Bass present.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Ray.
Present.
Commissioner Brown.
Present.
And Commissioner Love Wade.
Present.
And Commissioner Clock.
Present.
We have quorum.
Thank you, Commissioner Rybarczyk. Commissioners, if you could look over the agenda, let me know if there's anything that needs to be removed, anything that needs to be added, anything you see that needs to be adjusted. This would be the time to do it. Thank you for bringing it up on the screen. Presume Dom. All right, are there any amendments or changes from commissioners?
I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Okay.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Moving into community announcements. We start with community announcements from commissioners and then move to members of the community. If there's any member of the community that has something they'd like to share in general, please use the feature down below to raise your hand, or if you're on the phone, I believe the *9 will alert us as well. So if you could indicate that to us as commissioners are sharing, then we will get to you following that. Are there any commissioners with news to share? Quiet bunch tonight.
Chair
Yeah, yes, Commissioner, that was Brown, right?
Bonneau.
Bonneau, I'm sorry. I didn't see the yellow circle around you. Commissioner Bonneau.
No problem. Just wanted to share that weather permitting, 1A01 and surrounding areas are welcome to join us for our monthly cleanup on Sunday, February 21st at 1 p.m. meeting at the Spring Perry Triangle. We'll all be masked and distanced, and cleaning supplies will be provided. So would love to see anybody out there. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there announcements from other commissioners?
Yes, I did want to report that I did have a meeting with the advocacy group for the disabled in our city as it relates to transportation. They also are having quite a bit of difficulty with the intersection of Park Road and Kenyon Street, Park Place and Kenyon Street, where they did the bike lanes. Originally, the bike lanes were switched to the north side, were on the north side of the street, and they had to switch them to the south side of the street because it created a traffic hazard for the bikers. and they had put in a handicap accessible sidewalk on the side where the bikes were. However, when they reversed the side where the bikes would be and the parked vehicles, there's really no access for people with any disabilities to access that sidewalk on the north side of Kenyon Street, because they have a ramp, but you can only go north because there's a great huge light post in this where you could go left to go south on Kenyon. So it's a real bad hazard for them. Originally in the meeting, DDOT reported that the problem was created by ANC 1A because we opposed their plan for that corner. I immediately corrected him that we in fact had nothing to do with the poor planning on their part, and that is a part of their east-west mode transportation plans. They put those bike lanes in there and they did not consider a good plan. When the bikers complained, they amended the plan, but they did not take the disabled community into consideration. So that's a very big issue with them. They are also having a great deal of problems with the 14th Street bus bike configuration. The way that it is, in order for them to get on and off the buses, they have to actually cross bike lanes. Now, how safe is that for someone with a disability to have to cross those bike lanes to get on and off buses, and even just to cross the street? So they have quite a bit of concerns, and I do believe that we have support from communities other than ours. I know that the for hire vehicles community have a lot of concerns with what's going on up there on 14th Street. This all comes from the meeting that I had yesterday. So this is fresh off the press. They are concerned because there's nowhere for them to pull over to pick up and discharge passengers. And it's just totally unsafe for them. They were told that they could pull over to the bus lanes, but when they do, they're shooed away by police and others. So we need to, I'm going to continue to work with that community and see what we can do to help them and to help the rest of our constituents, because they affect our constituents as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Love Wade. I see Commissioner Clark has his hand up, and then Commissioner Rabarchik.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner Lima Morales and I were just at the DDOT Safety and Mobility meeting. Just to say that we have about 6 days to identify areas that we want. Mostly, they're looking to install street art, so actually on the pavement. We have 6 days to do that, and they want to implement 10 projects in the next immediately, and then 30 projects in the next 1 to 3 years. So I'm going to put a link in the chat, and so if you guys, anyone can go online and suggest areas for improvement to get those considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. Commissioner Rabarchik.
Thank you, Commissioners Clock and Lima Morales, for covering that livability study meeting. Of course, that is a very quick turnaround. That's shocking for that. And Commissioner Love Wade, I do know I tuned into the Ward 1 BAC meeting, the Bike Advisory Committee, last night before the Move DC meeting, and I do know that there was a representative from DDOT there taking feedback regarding 14th Street, and I'm going to reach out to them to try to set up a conversation with them as a check-in over the next month or so, because they are also receiving feedback and wanting to hear from commissioners and the general public about those lanes as well. So
right, I could see it wouldn't be so safe for them either if they have wheelchair accessible, wheelchairs and other mobility assistances in their bike lane. They're driving up, riding up, and bam, there are people trying to get on the bus who are in their bike lanes. I mean, it's just, I don't know.
there's been a lot of issues with curbside space usage as well. So I just wanted to address that and also thank all commissioners who had joined in so far on the 16th Street bus lane webinar and also the Move DC webinar, and encourage the public to visit the Move DC survey that's going on through the end of March. And I know that there's also webinars related to the livability study that the commissioners were also invited to as well today. So there are more and more updates just pouring out of DDOT this month. So please stay tuned. And if you are not signed up for the Transportation Committee emails, please reach out to me. And one other thing, I did want to reach out. I have a resident in my neighborhood who is interested in working with the Office of the Clean City on revamping the Columbia Heights cleanup, which is usually sponsored by the mayor's office. I know Commissioner Clock let me know that the mayor's office is planning on holding that earlier in the year this year. It won't coincide with Earth Day, but please reach out. I know I'm going to get that community neighbor hooked up with the Office of the Clean City to encourage folks to clean up in front of their homes and their blocks rather than having a large scale meetup like we have in the past. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gorpade.
Thank you. Hey, folks. Couple of big announcements. The DC Tuition Aid Grant is now open, and that is a scholarship that's available to DC students. For those of you who have already applied for it and gotten it, remember that you have to reapply every year, and you can get up to $10,000 to go to a public institution and up to $2,500 to go to a private HBCU. Unfortunately, this is not available to undocumented students, but if you are having any issues applying for DC Tag, getting your documentation together, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I can help you get all the paperwork together that you need, as well as if you know or are an undocumented student looking for scholarships, please do reach out to me and I can try to help you get connected to a couple. The other big thing that's available to young people right now is the Summer Youth Employment Program that opened up. That's available for young people between the ages of 14 and 24 to get 6 weeks of employment this summer through the Department of Employment Services. Again, if you're having any difficulties applying for that, make sure that you reach out sooner rather than later. The online application is closing on February 27th. And actually, one last plug. If you or anybody you know is running or planning to run an online internship for young people this summer and you are feeling lost and terrified at the prospect of doing this online, I'm going to be hosting a workshop and brainstorming session with youth development practitioners across the country next week. So if you are interested in that, please reach out and I can send you the workshop information.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other announcements from commissioners? In looking at the attendee list, I only see a hand raised from Trevorrow Culpepper, who is during a presentation. Oh, I see we have a hand raised from Chris L. Can we allow him to talk?
Hi, good evening. My name is Chris L. and I live at 3325 11th. In 07, I believe. So I'm attending tonight to share a concern I have about how the BZA special exception process was handled for 3315 11th Street. I emailed Commissioner Ray and Clock yesterday asking about the plan for public engagement for this application. And Commissioner Ray responded that the zoning committee had actually reviewed this in November at the developer's request, and the full committee apparently acted upon it in January. So I find this problematic for a couple of reasons. The notice from BZA is dated December 28th. As you probably know, the Postal Service has been experiencing extreme delays in getting mail. So I can tell from personal experience, I mail my condo dues to myself and it took 21 days for my January dues to arrive, December 26th to December 14th. So I'm not actually sure the notice arrived before you had your January meeting. I also note the applicant provided a statement of public outreach, which said in part, they're committed to working with neighbors regarding the project. The applicant will continue to work to communicate with neighbors and keep area residents informed about the project in advance of the board's public hearing. However, they haven't lived up to this statement. As of today, the orange placard is not posted to the front of the building, which is not legally required until 15 days before the hearing on March 3rd, but it kind of violates the spirit of their statement when they've faded 8.5 by 11, raised permit posted to the front window. And secondly, I spoke to the adjacent neighbor today, who is a longtime resident, who's an elderly woman who shares a party wall with the building about to be raised. And she told me she has no idea what's going on with the building next door. So it seems maybe the committee and ANC got a little ahead of itself in acting upon this request prior to the neighbors being informed that there was even a request for special exception from BZA. So I wanted to attend tonight to ask you all about how, kind of feeling like a neighbor who was excluded from the process, who has probably 12 row houses at some state of being vacant or being redeveloped or about to be redeveloped, to make sure that we are properly informed about, kind of agendas and these things, and no action is taken before the official notice comes from the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. One question for you. You did get notice. Do you plan to attend the BZA hearing?
Well, I did talk to folks at BZA today, so I understand I can become a party, and seeing that, I don't know what happened in January because nothing's online yet. So it seems like you all waited and said rent a parking space nearby, which I don't find to be a particularly great mitigation for this, and would have been a great opportunity for the neighbors to have a conversation about what the impact of a 9-unit apartment building is going to have on the square. So I probably will, if there isn't anything the ANC can do at this point to kind of mitigate the lost opportunity to adequately engage the neighbors, since no one knew this was happening since the notice came a month and a half after the BZA meeting, ANC BZA meeting.
Thanks. No, the reason I asked that is, I don't know what the ANC can do at this point, and if other commissioners have ideas, certainly this is a good time to raise them. But I do know with BZA cases, whether you're a party or not, every resident has a right to participate in those hearings and express concerns or objections. So the ANC process aside, please,
Yep.
for everyone on this call, please don't feel like you're not allowed to participate in those hearings. And I just want to make sure that people don't think that they can't.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Obviously my concern here is that neighbors were not the committee had a meeting and it was on nobody's radar because the official notice hadn't been set, and apparently it happened at the request of the developers. And I think the ANC ought to be working for the community and the neighbors. So those agendas ought not to include things that BZA has not properly noticed to the community, because we're not going online and checking your agendas every single month unless there's obviously something on our radar that might be in the pipeline here. So I was a little disappointed at the response that I got today. And I wanted to call it out to the full committee tonight to remind everyone that, these agendas and your outreach, it isn't just plugging it into some Dropbox online and assuming everyone is clicking the link every month.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Chris.
All right, no problem. Have a good meeting.
You too. I see we have Carolina has raised her hand. If we could bring her online.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
I just have some quick announcements. So I'm Carolina with District Bridges. So the first announcement is we have $2,000 grants open right now for any business in the Main Street. I did outreach. I flyered all over. So the applications are due on the 25th at noon, and they can be found on our website. It's a pretty simple application. If anybody needs a paper copy, they can contact me and we can make arrangements. The second announcement, we are talking about Columbia Heights Day. Of course, it would not be in person, but we're just waiting on the survey results from the business owners to see if this is something that they would want to consider for this year. And looking at a different model, it might be Columbia Heights Week or Columbia Heights Month, but the idea is to do it in June. And we're making the final decision next week when the survey responses come. And the last announcement I have is that we have a project with MOLA, and we're focusing on the 2 blocks of between Perry and Spring on 14th Street where the shooting happened last summer. So Commissioner Bonnet, I will send you an email with all the details. I believe that's your area. And that's all I wanted to say today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolina. Okay, are there any other announcements? Again, you could raise your hand if you're on the Zoom call or press *9. Seeing none, we will move in. Oh, yes.
Commissioner Bass, real quick before we get ahead, I do want to make sure we raise that ANC 1A is hosting Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton later in the month. So
I think I have a report on that.
Yeah, please, Commissioner Lovewade, if you want to go ahead, please.
Yeah, it's on the agenda, so I was just waiting until we got to it.
I would say this would be the time because it was put on the agenda under community announcements, which I think is why Commissioner Rabarczyk is bringing it up now.
Oh, okay. Well, Congresswoman Norton is hosting her Norton in Your Neighborhood series of town hall meetings with the Advisory Neighborhood Commission. So we'll be hosting her on February the 25th at 7 p.m. I would encourage you to go to our website to get additional details. We're also asking for your input. If you would send us your written issues or questions that you may have or want the Congresswoman to address. She's most interested in hearing what you have to say. If your focus is on transportation, if your focus is on crime, if your focus is on senior services to seniors or the virus, if you have any other issues, please let us know so that we can make this a very exchanging and fruitful town meeting. You know, there are budget considerations that we need to make sure DC gets from the federal government. So this is a very important meeting for our community. I look forward to having all of you join us.
Thank you, Commissioner Lovewade. I assume that there will be additional information forthcoming. Will that be going out via our email communications and placed on our listserv, or excuse me, website?
It's already on our website.
Okay.
The announcement,
excellent.
The announcement of the town hall meeting. You will be able to link tomorrow to direct to where to direct your questions.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks, Zach.
Okay, moving on to committee reports. Is there a report from Education Committee?
Sure. Yes, so we have not met since our January meeting where we had covered a lot of issues, particularly those surrounding language access and making sure families and residents were able to access COVID-related resources. So this month's resolution is an extension of that effort. We have moved our our committee meeting to a standing third Wednesday of every month. So our next one will be scheduled for February 17th at 7 p.m. We're going to talk budgets. You all know how I love budgets. We're going to take a look at the asks across some of our community-led coalitions, looking at mental health, out of school time, uniform per student funding formula, and at-risk funding weights. And we'll also probably, speaking of Eleanor Holmes Norton, we'll also take some time to discuss the new federal funding updates and how those can lead to some new opportunities for additional revenue streams.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Moving on to public safety, Commissioner Bonneau?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Public safety meets the third Thursday of the month. In January, we had a conversation with Councilmember Nadeau, as well as Columbia Heights Village Tenant Association President and super volunteer organizer of Mutual Aid Movement DC, Paul Jones. And so that was a great conversation, especially in light of recent violence in the neighborhood. February 18th at 7 is our next meeting, and would love for folks to attend, where we're going to look at a draft resolution calling for oversight of DC acquisition and use of surveillance. And we'll be joined by our partner organization, Community Oversight of Surveillance DC Coalition. So we've had some prior conversations about this, and depending how that conversation goes, would look to vote on a resolution at our March ANC meeting. So this is your chance to be a part of that process. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Moving on to the Transportation Committee, Commissioner Rybarczyk.
Hi all, thank you for, I know I already spoke about some of this. Did notice a error on the agenda for today. We're meeting the 4th Tuesday of the month, so that's Tuesday, February 23rd at 7 p.m. Last month we had Aaron Goldbeck with DDOT come present plans or preliminary plans for the Crosstown Phase 2 project. I know DDOT is taking the community and commissioner questions and responses back to DDOT, formulating some other alternatives that they'll bring forward later on. I'm hoping at the next meeting we're able to get a readout from Commissioner Clock and Lima Morales on the livability study, also review notes and feedback from the other DDOT public meetings to see how the ANC could issue a formal response. And as time permits, also take a look at pressing issues in the budget. And I don't know if Commissioners Brown or Ray or Bass wanted to also share anything about Crosstown, since you all are deeply tied into that project.
Yes, thank you so much for that update, Commissioner Rybarczyk. Just wanted to share with the community that the proposals for the Crosstown project for particularly Park Place, Kenyon Street, Water Street, are posted on ANC1A's website. So we welcome the community's feedback on those proposals. I think DDOT mentioned the timeline would likely be, correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Rybarczyk, but April, May. So we're collecting that feedback, gathering it, and sharing that feedback to DDOT.
Sure, and I'll just add that I know Commissioner Brown is doing a great job in focusing on Kenyon Street in particular, which has a number of issues that still need to be worked through. I'll say, as far as the plans shared by DDOT recently, there were some updates for Park Place. We don't have an updated plan set for Water yet, and we're eagerly waiting for those. It looks like there's still some decision points, but right now they're at the 30% design. So we're looking forward to the next update where they'll be further along. But, you know, while it's primarily been posted as or proposed as a bike lane project, we've been working closely with DDOT to mitigate parking concerns, increase parking where we can, and to increase the tree cover. So we've been pushing for it to be more than just a bike lane project. And that may be why it's slowed it down. But I definitely think that it's worth it, because all those other issues really do need to be addressed. And nothing from you, Commissioner Ray?
Oh, no, I thought you two both covered it very well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from you, Commissioner Rybarczyk?
No, that's all. Just many meetings this week and next with DDOT. So thank you all for your time that you've devoted to them.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ray, Zoning, Parks and Planning.
We did hold a meeting last month. The primary discussion was on the historic district that we are going to be discussing further tonight. So I'll leave it for that. We did have another BZA case, but it was withdrawn, so we don't have to worry about that one this month, and some others have shifted. So next week, Tuesday, because we hold our meetings on the third Tuesday of every month, so February 16th at 7 p.m., we will meet to discuss 1219 Kenyon Street. That's to construct a two-story rear addition. 3556 13th Street, which is going to be a three-story building in the RF1 zone. We're going to look at 616 Quebec Place, which is to add a third story in the 1A08 area. And 48, I'll put this in the chat just so everyone sees it this visually too. 428 Manor Place, which is a recurring theme. They have, as we discussed before, they've made some propositions, and so we're going to discuss that a little further that night. So please join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Moving into presentations, do we have a representative from Trinity AME Zion Church to give us updates on the church-owned property currently being used as parking lots? I see a hand raised. Yes. Simone, I believe you're with us. There we go.
Okay, great.
Is there anyone else with you tonight to talk about this?
Unfortunately, Pastor Friedman could not be with us tonight. He sends his regrets.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that they weren't being left in the attendee.
No, it's me.
Okay.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Simone Boring-Devaney with CSG Urban Partners, and my firm represents the church in helping them with their efforts to redevelop the parcels that they own on Meridian Place Northwest. I'm here just to give a quick update on the church's efforts. I've been to the ANC. It's been almost 2 years that we came to request a letter of support from the ANC to have our request to DEMPED to change the use for the lots from parking to a residential use. We were successful in getting the ANC support for that, and we were very thankful. We continue to try to remove the impediments for the redevelopment of the lots, and the lots are located on the 1400 block of Meridian Place between 14th and 16th Street in Commissioner Morales's single member district 1A. 02. The church continues its efforts. It's been very challenging. We've been working with DEMPED to remove the use restriction, and you'd think it would be an easy decision to allow housing to be developed on vacant parking lots. The challenge is that there's 3 lots, and it looks like they're one contiguous lot, but they are bifurcated by 2 lots that are owned by the housing authority. And those lots, we've been working with Housing Authority in discussions with them to see how they could potentially partner with the church to include those parcels into a larger cohesive redevelopment project. So I just, again, wanted to come. I know the lots are vacant, and right now they're not even being used for parking. One of the challenges is that the lots are not zoned for parking, and so the BZA special exception order has expired. So we are going to be working with Land Use Council to get a new BZA. So I just wanted to come on the church's behalf to give an update on where the church is, that they're still actively pursuing redevelopment of the lots. They don't want to leave them in the condition that they are. And in the meantime, until they are ready to move forward with the redevelopment, they would like to at least be able to use them for parking to help alleviate some of the parking challenges in the community. So we're not quite ready to ask for support for our BZA application, but when we are, we'd like to come back and give a more detailed, in-depth update. With that, I'll open it for any questions.
Sure, and I'll tee it up with so that other commissioners who may not have been on the commission during the last BZA process or case for the parking relief it's a unique situation where there have been issues related to the parking lots themselves, though not related to the church owning the parking lots. So because we wanted to give an opportunity for all the commissioners to fully understand this issue and do that, as well as community members in advance of a BZA case, which we know is coming, we thought it was an excellent idea. And I'd like to thank Commissioner Lehman Morales for bringing this to our attention, that this is a wonderful opportunity for us to better work with each other to understand what the issues are. And if there are community concerns, to address those in advance of the BZA case. This provides a lot more time and opportunity to work in support of each other than we've had previously. So I applaud you both for being here tonight so that we can do that. That said, as mentioned, if anyone has any questions, this is a great opportunity. And I'll even say, because I know we have a number of attendees on the phone, likely from the immediate neighborhood, if they have any questions, this would be a great opportunity as well. Even though we typically don't do that during presentations, I think that it's perfectly appropriate in this case. So if there's anyone at the meeting tonight that has a question related to this, or even has a statement in support, please raise your hand or press star name so that we can let you be heard. And I am not seeing anything, which is surprising to me, but a good surprise, a happy surprise.
Good sign.
I see Commissioner Ray finally raised their hand. Good for you.
Well, I didn't want to, but Simone, thank you for all the time you've put into making sure we understand this. I did have an opportunity to go back and read the former order and understand what the areas of requirements are. And one of them is the screening. And I'm assuming that, and I know because the church doesn't have any money to put into screening, but that's probably going to be one of those areas that we'll be talking about.
Right.
But it did have something in there about some plants that were supposed to be planted, and I would have them at least check to see if the plants have survived.
Okay. Yeah, and that's why I said it's premature right now, because we need to go back through the order. We need to, meet with Holland and Knight, who's going to be the church's land use council, and make sure when we come back we have the right request.
Exactly, and there may have been changes. I'm going off the old stuff, so
right.
It's been a long time. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, since I'm not seeing any other questions, we thank you for coming tonight, and we look forward to seeing you again once the BZA case has been filed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Moving on to Trevoris Culpepper from PEPCO, if we can bring him up. Good evening. Good evening, Trevoris. Can you hear us?
I can hear you guys. And is it possible for me to share my screen? And there are two other.
Okay. Who is with you tonight? Trevoris, you muted yourself.
Yeah, no, he's coming back through. We're probably elevating him.
Okay.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Who's with you tonight on your team?
There is Vadu from Clark Construction, and then Pat Burke from DCI Mead.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Can you guys see my screen?
I don't see anything that yet. I don't see that you're sharing anything yet.
Okay, hold on one second. Share screen. Okay.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much for allowing us to come before you to talk about the Capital Grid Project. And good evening to all the ANC commissioners and folks who are on the phone. As many of you all do know, we are performing work in the neighborhood for the Capital Grid Project, which does include construction of the transmission line that you are currently seeing on Georgia Avenue, as well as the upgrade to the Harvard substation on Sherman and Harvard Street. And we're here to provide an update on the activity that's taking place within ANC 1A on the substation and construction in the area. So thank you all very much, and I'm going to pass it along to Mr. Badu from Clark Construction. Hey, Badu, are you there?
I think I was muted. Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Very good. So thank you, ANC 1A committee commissioners, and good evening to everyone from the community who's attending this call. As Trevor said, my name is Vaidu Iyer. I'm the project manager with Clark Construction for the Pepco Harvard substation. Clark Construction is the general contractor that is working with Pepco for the construction of this particular substation. As you can see on this slide over here, and you know, more so if you want to focus on the timeline that you can see at the bottom of the slide is kind of how I'm going to describe this particular slide. We mobilized and started our construction August of 2020, August 10th of 2020 is when we mobilized. We basically started with our abatement and demolition work. Our major portion of the previous year in 2020 from August through December was in abatement of any kind of hazardous materials. As you all know, that this particular substation is a very old building, built in 1907. So we had our specialty contractors do the abatement of asbestos and any other hazardous material. And at this point in time, in the month of January and early Feb, we completed that abatement process. We have, as members of the community and some of you commissioners who might have walked around or along Sherman and Harvard Avenue might have seen, have started with our demolition of the old building since last week, and we are in progress with that demolition. It is going to be continuing for the next couple of weeks before majority of the demolition, the above grade demolition that you see, is done, and all the items are sorted out and taken out from the job site. As you can see here in this slide, the construction activity is approximately 2 years to complete the construction. So basically, once this demolition is complete, we will basically start with our supportive excavation to basically support the boundaries, the perimeters of the property, to make sure that nothing caves in before we start our excavation. Excavation is going to be followed by construction of the building, and then another additional year for the equipment installation and commissioning. So far, we have been working. Our working hours are starting at 7 a.m. We've been working from 7 to 5. Typical work hours have been from 7 to 5, Monday through Friday. We've had some occasional Saturdays in order to cover any weather days or any other DCRA holidays during which the site has to remain closed and there is no construction that is allowed. We are also actually going to have our community action group meeting, which is the fourth meeting this first quarter of 2021 on February 25th. At this time, as I indicated, our demolition is nearly complete, and in order to proceed with the next stage of our project, we have been working very closely with Pepco and with all our DC authorities, DDOT, DC Water, and DCRA and DOEE, in order to make sure that every phase of the construction and the new building that is coming up, all the documentation is approved, all the permits are in place. Currently, and recently, we received approval for the phase 2 construction that you see on this particular slide that Tavoris has brought up. This particular phase is kind of, shall I say, the shortest phase for about approximately a 2-month duration. It is also the phase where we kind of extend our construction site boundaries on Harvard and Sherman because of the space, given the very small footprint of the site, the space that we need for equipment to move around the job site to drill the piles for supportive excavation. So this phase 2 of the traffic control plan that got approved will start on February 15th of 2021, which is upcoming Monday. The actual activities will start on the 16th, as 15th is the President's Day, and there's no construction. That said, the main changes from what you see right now is that the temporary sidewalk that's on Harvard Street will not be available during phase 2. That particular sidewalk space that you see will essentially become part of the construction area or the construction activity area for these 2 months. The parking on Sherman Avenue, there's about 4 or 5 parking spots that's on Sherman Avenue to the west side, between Harvard and Columbia. Those parking spots will not be available again for the duration of these 2 months. And the left turn lane that you have from onto Harvard Street from Sherman, that is not going to be available for this particular phase. Again, as I indicated, this is for a 2-month duration during which we have planned and scheduled our pile installation in such a way that we have found the most effective way to minimize this particular phase to the shortest possible time per DDOT's request. And they've gone ahead and approved that. Again, as it says here, the temporary sidewalk from Columbia Road northwest to Harvard Street on Sherman that you see right now, that will still be maintained. So those are the main changes that we're going to see. I have been personally working with Tavoris and his team to make sure that we let our neighbors know, let anybody and everybody around in the community know through our 3-week look aheads about this particular phase. And we will continue to keep you guys posted. As soon as this phase is over, we'll again make sure through our 3-week look aheads to keep you posted of the progress. Another significant item that is going to be on site once our supportive excavation is complete is going to be a tower crane that will essentially be installed within the site premises. It is anticipated to be sometime around April 2021, and it will be there for the rest of the year. I'd say at least for now till about early December. The tower crane is mainly going to be used for pouring the concrete and also erecting the steel for the new building, and which is why the duration that you see from April to December for the tower crane. Those are the 2 slides that I have, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me now. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you. And just for the interest of time, just wanted to update everybody on the construction of the Georgia Avenue transmission line. As you can see that we wrapped up construction on Gresham Place. We're currently right now at the corner of Gresham and Georgia, and we'll soon be installing manholes further up the street once we get pending approval from WMATA. So that construction would start sometime in the spring. But we do have construction that's ongoing right now at Georgia and Gresham Place, and will continue throughout May 2021. But we'll be working up the street at the 3500 block once we get further review from WMATA on their infrastructure closest to the intersection of Georgia and New Hampshire. And then finally, there is additional distribution work that will take place in support of the substation, where we will have to excavate at going along Harvard Street, west to 16th Street, as well as Columbia Road to 6th Street from Sherman Avenue. We're currently working with DCI Media internal distribution team to coordinate this activity. We don't have a schedule at this point in time of when we'll start, but it will be coordinated this year. So would like to definitely follow up when we have more information on that. And as well, we do have the dedicated phone line and email address. And then of course, I'm always available for further questions. So happy to take any questions at this time from commissioners in the audience. Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Trevoris. I see Commissioner Robarczyk has his hand up, and so does Commissioner Wade. So we'll go in that order, and then I have a question if neither of them ask my question. So we'll start with you, Commissioner Robarczyk. I believe your hand was up first.
Thank you. Trevoris, thank you. I have a few quick questions. Could you please outline the outreach to the neighboring properties near the substation, how that's gone? Can you also please provide these slides to the commission in either PDF or PowerPoint form? And then could you please also dive into the excavation moving forward down Harvard and Columbia? That was a bit of news to me, and I know, especially right now during the pandemic, I can see a lot of issues moving forward. I'm sure Commissioner Love Wade shares those as well.
Correct. I can share that we have gone door to door with the outreach for the substation construction, and then also letting them know about the phase 2, and that was done last week. So we did go door to door along Sherman Avenue, Columbia Road, and on the other side streets near that area with outreach. And we have also sent mailers to folks' homes with the time frames of the construction in different phases with the contact information for Mr. Vadu-Ayer if there are any additional questions. And we can send this to you PDF. In regards to the additional work, we have shared that information in the past, but we have not identified a time when we would actually start the construction for the additional work. And I know you're speaking of this here. And what we have done is try to look at what is the best possible route for the distribution construction. And this is more so supportive of the Champlain substation. It's similar to work that we've done in the past. I don't know if you've seen a lot of the construction prior to the Harvard substation demolition, where we were on Harvard, on Sherman Avenue, and then, along 11th Street, in about 2 or 3 years ago. And that's work that was called the distribution cutover work, where we were transferring customers to the nearby substations in advance of the Harvard substation construction. And we'll have to do similar work for the Champlain substation, where we would have to transfer customers to nearby substations in advance of the Champlain substation construction. So there will be additional work along W Street, as you can see in the red, and then other areas along Harvard Street and then Columbia Road. And I believe we do have Joe Shuey, who's on the line. He's with our distribution team and can give you a little bit more detail as far as the coordination and further detail on that.
Thank you. Do you know, is this being coordinated along with DDOT's 16th Street bus project? Because I know that was something that was brought up earlier, is there's a number of different utilities conducting construction at the same time.
Yes, we have met with DDOT 16th Street bus team and also the contractor, and we've been trying to coordinate up and all along 16th Street. So I know that they're starting at 16th in Arkansas at this point in time, but we have been coordinating with them on this project as well.
Okay, Commissioner Lovejoy, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. I also have a statement for the sake of our commissioners. We have been meeting with PEPCO, my single member district, in the residents for about 4 years now, I believe, on this project. From this concept, we've had, I know, at least 4 community meetings, if not more. So PEPCO has done a great job in community outreach. They've been responsive to our concerns about rodents and the impact on traffic. Knew all along that they wouldn't be able to keep that sidewalk open as I go down that street every day. It just wasn't safe. So I'm glad you're closing that off. I had 2 questions. First, the crane, the tower crane, how tall will that be and how imposing? Because we don't have high buildings.
So, Commissioner Wade, good evening. This is Baidu Iyer with Clark. As far as the tower crane details, I, at this point in time, do not have the specific tower crane model with me exactly as to how much the height is. The one thing I can definitely say is that, the tower crane, the load-bearing member of the tower crane, which is there, it will be within and inside the construction site premises for concrete and steel. You are not going to, as with any other tower crane that you see around, see a load-bearing member kind of swing, over or above any of the surrounding or adjacent properties. That said, I will take that as an action to get you information on the tower crane. I'll contact my subcontractor regarding that, and I'll pass that information to you through Traverse.
And just
Okay,
also,
and
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I have a different question, so go ahead with that.
No, I was just going to say, in addition to that, we will be sending out letters to community members, letting them know that the crane will be on site, and they should receive that in the coming weeks before the site, before the crane is erected on the site.
Okay, and with regard to your February 25th CAG meeting, what was the time for that?
The time is 6:30 to 8 p.m.
I think, Mr. Culpepper, I think a number of our community will be otherwise engaged. That's the night of the town hall meeting for Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, which the ANC is hosting.
Okay.
At 7. So it's a big conflict. If there's any way you can maybe adjust the meeting date or time.
Yes, we most certainly can do that. We most certainly can change that date and time.
Okay, thank you. And you'll get back to me and I'll get back to the commission.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'd also just like to say I do serve on that CAG committee as well. So we're very involved in what's going on with the substation and making sure they keep the historic integrity of the build.
Yeah, and we're grateful that you're on that group, Commissioner. You're serving us well. Traverse, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
I know this is in the future because part of this whole thing, part of the capital grid is creating a power. I'm going to get the wrong word here, but you're creating a energy path through the city rather than all the way around. So you're building a redundancy in the network.
Yes, sir.
And I know that comes down New Hampshire Avenue and then goes down Georgia Avenue to Gresham and then over. My question relates to Georgia Avenue. When is the work on Georgia Avenue going to commence? And is that going to be open trench? Could you describe that a little bit more? I haven't really asked questions related to it recently because it was so far in the future, but it's not that far in the future anymore.
Right. And Mr. Pat Burke is on from DCIME. Pat, could you take that question and give them a little bit more detail on that?
Yeah, Travoris, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
So Georgia Avenue, we're going from Gresham all the way up to New Hampshire. We finished up Gresham kind of the later part of last year, and now we're turning left onto Georgia Avenue and working north, really all the way up to New Hampshire. It is an open cut excavation. We're actually connecting the Harvard substation that was talked about earlier in the presentation all the way up to Tacoma substation, which is about 3.5 miles northeast of the Harvard sub. So we're connecting both substations with conduit that's going to run the actual cable from substation to substation. So you're going to be seeing a crew working north from about the 2800 block of Georgia Avenue all the way up towards New Hampshire. We do have crews in New Hampshire working southwest down towards Georgia Avenue to where eventually they're going to connect in the middle. There is that WMATA train station, the substation that's up at Georgia and New Hampshire. So we do have to do some conduit work and excavation work through some of their structures that we're having engineers take a look at that has a little bit of a delay up there. But we are going to be working on Georgia Avenue for all of this year, starting down towards Gresham and working up towards New Hampshire. You are going to see on the 3500 block, we're setting a manhole, which is 32 feet long by 9 feet wide this Friday. So, and then 2 weeks from that Friday, the 26th, we're setting the second manhole in that same block. So we will have cranes out there this Friday, and then the 26th, which is another Friday, to set these large manholes that connect this excavation and conduit work that's connecting these substations. So that's kind of a high level view of, we will be on Georgia Avenue for the majority of this year and probably a little bit into next year. And I just want to make sure everyone knows, if you see one of our crews out there, whether it be DCI Mead or JM, our subcontractor, never hesitate to come up and ask a question, whether it's deliveries for businesses or any questions from any residents. We'll do everything we can to make sure it's a smooth process, and you'll see that gradual progression as we work up and down Georgia.
Okay. And what's that impact going to be like on traffic? Are there certain hours during which you will be doing that work?
Yeah, the permit time's from 9:30 to 3:30.
Okay.
We do have approved DDOT traffic control plans. Where we're doing the conduit install, depending on where the excavation and that running trench line runs, will determine where the traffic runs to. But there will be some lanes of traffic that are eaten up in the areas we are working. And we do have a third-party traffic control company out there every single day to try and make sure that traffic's running as smooth as possible. So we'll do everything we can to try and limit the amount of disruption that has.
Okay, and I'll just say, could you work with Travoris, and if you could give me some high-level timeline on when that work's going to be, and some more details, and send it to me by email, I would appreciate that.
You got it.
Commissioner Ray, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, this is more of an ask for the community, Travoris, that you've heard before, but on the rat abatement, the rats along Sherman Avenue and behind the homes of Sherman Avenue are noticeable. So anything that you folks can do to continue to bait and trap, or maybe even work with the Department of Health and having their teams come out and look for burrows near the site, going out from the site, that would be much appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will do that. I know Badu is on the line, and we did talk about the frequency of when we do additional road abatement. I know we can take that back and share, give you an update on that. And then I would share that with the construction on Georgia Avenue, we would actually like folks to contact actually Miss Ann Walters. Her information is here. And she is sort of like the eyes and ears on the ground, and she is 24/7. So if there's ever any question about the construction that's taking place, please contact Miss Ann Walters, or either by phone or email.
That's it for me.
Sorry. Hi, Trevoris and Pat. I hate to belabor this. I don't want to keep us too long, but I do know in my day job, I've been trying to work desperately with Washington Gas to mitigate the impacts of construction on small businesses. And I've seen firsthand how crews outside of small businesses can affect customer access, especially during COVID, how restaurants are more reliant than ever on pickup and drop off deliveries. So could you just quickly share how you're able to mitigate those impacts while crews are on Georgia Avenue, and also where the vehicles, the construction vehicles, will be parked during the day, because I know that can also cause issues for folks trying to access small businesses.
Yeah, with Ann Walters and Robinson Associates, as well as Pepco, with our 3-week look ahead, we're reaching out to businesses as we work up and down Georgia, and any deliveries that we can assist with, we're going to make sure those deliveries happen. As far as vehicles being parked on the job site, there is a zone on our traffic control plans from DDOT that allows us to park our vehicles. And we instruct our crews not to drive their personal vehicles out to the job site, that they use the company issued vehicles and equipment, so that there's not a ton of parking that our crews are taking up. So it's all just constant communication and doing everything we can to not have an impact on the businesses, and do everything we can to help. And we're willing to do whatever we can to help.
Thank you. And very last thing, I just wanted to check, have you been in touch with the Lower Georgia Avenue Main Street director?
We
Teresa
have
Edmondson?
not been able to get in touch. If you can provide a contact, I know we did speak with Brianne Dornbush last fall and gave her an update on this was taking place, but have not. I know there's been some changes there. So if there's a direct contact, we would definitely appreciate that.
Okay.
All right. Are there any other questions? Let's see, I see something from the attendee list. That's Dottie. Okay. Well, with that, then I thank you all, and we can move on to the next presentation.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to following back up.
Thank you. Next would be Ali Bobak from Councilmember Nadeau's office.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. And can I do video, or are we just doing voice today?
I think we could trust you with video.
Great. I just want to see everybody. This is so exciting. Because I didn't get to introduce myself last week to all the new commissioners. So first, I just want to say hello. My name is Ali Bobak. I'm the Deputy Director of Constituent Services for Councilmember Nadeau. So welcome, congrats, commissioners who came back, and welcome new commissioners. I am kind of your go-to person for all things council and or constituent services. And that obviously goes for all the residents listening as well. I know you got to hear directly from the council member last month. So thank you for that. I have quite a few updates, but I will try to go through them as quickly as possible and just say that to get general updates from our office, please do sign up for our newsletter at brianneknadeau.com. But I know we've all been, concerned about vaccine distribution. We do continue to see positive COVID-19 cases reported, and it's important that we don't let our guard down and continue to take safety precautions. We need to keep educating the community about the vaccine. And we really encourage you that when it comes your time in line to get the vaccine, that you go get it. I know that a lot of our seniors maybe are having issues accessing the vaccine. You can feel free to refer any of those seniors to our office and directly to me. My number is 202-531-5186. Our whole team is all hands on deck every time new appointments are open to Ward 1 seniors or healthcare workers. I know, and Commissioner Bonneau has become part of our team. She's been making appointments with us. Commissioner Brown, sent over some seniors that we were able to get vaccine appointments for, or maybe not yet, but we're working to get vaccine appointments for. And so please do feel free to send those seniors over. We've been working with buildings, Columbia Heights Village, Harvard Towers, Hubbard Place, all along the 14th Street corridor to get seniors registered. So we really want to make sure that we're doing that. Also, if you talk to seniors, encourage them, if they've been to a hospital recently, to call them to get vaccines. Or if they're a member of a local clinic, that sometimes is easier than doing this kind of quick login on Friday mornings and just hoping you get one. Last Friday, the 1,800 appointments ran out in 6 minutes. So I got one senior and then couldn't get any more. So definitely, but happy to work with anybody who's eligible to get the vaccine to get it. And Councilmember Nadeau, Parallel has been working with the Department of Health to just try to make this process easier, to advocate for certain members of our communities to get vaccines, such as childcare workers. And so any commentary you all have about this process, please also send it to me and we can continue to advocate for improvements. You might have seen that we reintroduced 2 bills on street vending, and thanks to your commission. I know we've worked so much on so many of the street vending issues. So the first is the Street Vending Decriminalization Amendment Act, and that's to take away criminal penalties for all types of vending. And the second one is the Street Bill Sidewalk Vending Zone Amendment Act of 2021. This creates a whole new licensing scheme for our sidewalk vendors. It creates something called sidewalk vending zones, in which you kind of have little mini spaces in which people could vend. And I'm excited to keep working with the commission because we did, present an initial sidewalk vending zone in the bill in Columbia Heights. And so already have started talking to commissioners, but excited to keep talking to commissioners about what that could look like. I can send one of the commissioners maybe the bill numbers and you can put them in later or follow up with whoever might be interested. Let's see, I'm just kind of scrolling through the updates to see what is prominent. I will mention that, council is in oversight hearings right now and budget is coming up. So we've already started today, for example, a DSLBD had the oversight hearing, but if anybody listening or any of the commissioners has questions about how to submit written or virtual testimony or how to testify at any of the council hearings, again, please feel free to reach out to our office. I'm happy to direct you to the correct office or guide you in how to submit that testimony. It's just a really wonderful way to get your voice heard. And as a constituent services person who hears, the issues that everyone's facing all day, I hope that you will all, go and say it to the council, directly to the directors, because that's, how change gets made. So, one other exciting update is the short-term family housing site for Ward 1 was unveiled last week. So that's super, super exciting. We were really grateful to all the work that all the ANCs did to make sure that happened. A special shout out to ANC 1B because it is in their ANC, and they did quite a bit of work to make that happen. So we're really excited. It should start functioning, I think, around March. So we'll be sure to keep you updated, but we're obviously excited to, although, families coming through that shelter will be maybe not in unfortunate circumstances, we are still very happy and excited to welcome them into our neighborhood for the months that they will be staying. And of course, school is back in in-person sessions. So, we continue to monitor that, continue to hear feedback. And of course, any feedback that you all might have, please feel free to send it over as always. I will stop there because I think that was a lot, but let me just say for those listening again, my name is Allie Bobak. My email is abobak@dccouncil.us. My direct phone number is 202-531-5186. And I'm here to take any questions if anybody has follow-up.
Thank you, Allie. Are there any questions? I see a question from Commissioner Miller.
Hi, how are you, Allie?
I'm good. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. I wanted to ask because, again, for those, especially our newer commissioners, we've submitted quite a few resolutions and letters in support of the street vendors and also these street vending zones. We did not see it go to hearing last year or last council period. Do you know, have you heard, what's the prognosis on getting that to a hearing and to a vote once, presuming that, once we get through the oversight and budget season?
So both bills have been referred to the committee of the whole, in which the chair is Chairman Mendelson. So that's going to be the chairman's decision. So if you want to reach out and ask the chair of it, and then the vending decriminalization bill also asked for input from the judiciary. But those are both committee of the whole because it's DCRA, and we don't have a date. But I definitely encourage you to keep publicly asking for one.
Well, and that's why I'm asking, because we did ask for one. We specifically asked the chairman because of it. We were in the same boat at the end of last year, hoping we could sort of get that in under the wire. So yeah, I didn't know if we were in the same situation or if there had been any movement forward on getting feedback from him on whether or not. Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, the exciting thing is that we had a lot more co-introducers this time around.
Oh, did you? Okay.
So we had, I believe, 8 for the decriminalization bill and 6 for the sidewalk vending zone bill. And I think the difference was mainly due to the complexity of the sidewalk vending zone bill. It's a long bill to get through. So, so I think that is a huge difference than last year. And, you can also talk to the co-introducer council members as well. Christina Henderson, our newest at-large council member, is one of them. So definitely that's a step forward, I think.
Great. No, glad this is back on early. So we've got a whole year to work on it. Thank you. Although I'd like to not wait another year. This is what, year 3?
Yeah, preaching to the choir.
I know. But I say that to say you guys have been very vigilant about keeping on top of that. So it's really appreciated. And thank you for really keeping this moving forward.
And I know our vendors are also hopefully going to get started on a Safe Serve course in the next few weeks. So they're going to start getting their DC health regulatory, what's the paperwork under their belt. DC Health has did a presentation for them already on some of the regulatory things they would need to do to make sure they're in compliance. So I know especially the 14th Street vendors who sell food specifically are working to get moving as well. So once things really can start, they can just get the ball running right away.
And I just want to, side note that just real quick, because I do hear pushback from residents with the concern that this is not going to adhere to the same level and quality of health standards that we would expect normally. But I'm glad that you brought up that there is still the regulations and standards of public health and Department of Health intervention. So thank you for mentioning that, because that's probably the number one thing I hear of concern, which they're not getting, nobody gets to pass on public health.
Nope, we saw that. I saw that on Twitter as well. Re-emphasize neither bill, but especially the sidewalk vending zone bill does not touch any health regulations. So the Department of Health regulations on food are not at all impacted by this bill. Thanks, Commissioner.
I see there's a question from an attendee with email maceda@aol.com. And then there's a follow-up question from Chris, who we heard from earlier. So we could allow them to ask their questions.
Hello, Ali.
Yes.
Ali, it's Lydia. Hi. Did you mention the emergency family shelter? And did you mention an opening date?
So I don't have an exact date. It was unveiled 2 weeks ago, which means that it's complete. But in terms of when it will actually start accepting families. I believe it's in the next few months, but I do not have it. I do not have an exact date for that. I can follow up with the committee director.
And that's the one on 14th and Clifton?
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we're really excited for it. So it also it has 15 units of permanent supportive housing for seniors. So those are going to be some of our most vulnerable people experiencing homelessness.
That's wonderful. Was the unveiling kind of quiet? I think I missed it.
Yeah, it was super quiet. They organized it in less than 24 hours, and we couldn't invite the ANCs. It was basically just the council member speaking to a empty room with director of DHS there. So hopefully one day we'll be able to have a more positive celebration with everybody.
Thank you very much.
Can we bring up Chris so he can ask his question?
Hi, Ali. Thanks for presenting. I actually glanced through this bill because I've been concerned about the growing amount of kind of uncontrolled vendors in that area. And I'd echo Commissioner Miller's concerns that there is a lot of talk about the health issue and food vendors. So probably some more outreach to clarify what exactly the bill does in that area would be helpful. But two questions. One is, I thought the placement of the zones on the 14th Street area around the metro station, I believe in the plaza, was good. But my question is is there a mechanism, or will street vending laws or regulations be enforced so that the area now being mostly occupied will no longer be a place where vendors could set up shop? And I ask because DC USA is, it's vacant pretty much. And if I'm an owner of that building, no retailer in their right mind is looking at that right now and saying, that's a place where I want to spend tens of thousands of dollars a month on a lease.
Yeah, so I think that one of the key pieces of this bill is that one of the licenses that would allow people to vend in a sidewalk vending zone is a manager license. And the hope with that is that people can register under a sidewalk vending zone manager, which could be a community-based organization. And that was really how it was envisioned, or a vendor-led co-op. And that they would be able to provide some of the structure to make sure that the large group of vendors were in compliance. DCRA would still have regulatory oversight over the vending zone as they do now. But I think that extra addition of the manager, kind of think of it as like a market manager. Markets are very well organized because the manager has a vested interest in making sure that it's following all the regulations. And that's kind of the idea with the vending zone. The other piece had with the vendors that we do see in that area, although it has increased during, I think, just for reasons that we can all understand, that people are not currently employed and need other ways of income, but they want to be in compliance, I think, is the core thing. They want to be in compliance. They want to get a license. They want to be paying taxes. They want to be part of the economy and not the informal economy, because they obviously currently are part of the economy. So I really think, speaking many years with the vendors, that once we give them a path that is actually accessible for them, which they don't currently have, you'll see, I think the hope and the buy-in here, and we've worked on it with the vendors, is that this is a solution that works for them, that they're excited about now becoming formal.
Yeah, I hope so. Like I said, it seemed well structured in my informal neighbor capacity, but I do hope the disinvestment of DC USA is part of the thinking here as well. The second part is, I believe one of the zones is in the plaza, and that part of the neighborhood has become a less attractive place for a lot of people to hang out, particularly with the fountain being broken for many years now. And I wonder if you have anything from the councilwoman's perspective about how we can kind of return that place to a state where people might see that as a destination to say, I have a niece, and a place where I might want to take her in the middle of the day.
Well, I may call us an optimistic office, but I'm hoping that this bill could be part of that, because the idea is to make it a destination, you know, like in the way that the farmers market really changes the way that plaza is on the weekends.
Right.
Maybe the vendors could be there every day during the week. And, you know, upkeep, we know, has been an issue. We're working with it. We work now directly with the city administrator on things around the plaza and things that need to be fixed in Columbia Heights. But definitely happy to work with any neighbor. And I know this commission works on it very often, and ways we can activate that, especially after the public health emergency, to keep activating that space and what it was envisioned for.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Chris.
I had my hand up. I'm all over the place, Ally, with this vending legislation. First, we worked really hard in this ANC to get that plaza up there to make it accessible to the community for its use. On the weekends, it's not available for the community's recreational use or relaxation use. It's for the farmers market. That's all great. But if we're going to turn that into a permanent, some kind of marketplace, that totally destroys the public realm as it was designed. And it doesn't, I don't know, maybe the neighborhood is changing so greatly that people want a constant and consistent market instead of a park in some place once we get those fountains fixed for the children to play in. I think that that's very confusing to me, this conversation about putting vendors up in there as a particular market space. That's to be discussed, but I just wanted you to know that it really threw up some flags for me there. My second concern is the food that's being sold by vendors. Those who are licensed by DCRA with a vendor's license have certain food preparation and storage requirements. I notice a lot of the street vendors don't. I don't see the sanitation requirements. I don't see the heat or cool conditions. I think there's an opportunity to breed food illnesses, foodborne illnesses. So I'm not familiar really with the legislation you're talking about, but I hope these kinds of things are being addressed and that they're not being perpetuated. I'm sorry. And I had one more question about that. Well, I'll give you a call to talk about it personally.
Yeah,
Okay.
I definitely, two quick things, and I know we're taking a lot of time on this, but we'll look at the piece of the bill that talks about Civic Plaza. I mean, it is quite limited how much physical space a sidewalk vendor could take in the pieces of space that we've been giving them. But I agree, Commissioner Lovewaite, and like I said, really want to work on this with the commission. Already took a walk through the area, and I think, let's keep thinking about that 100%. And again, with the food, we do not touch food regulations, and I think this is going to help, because right now the vendors you have are not licensed. So if they're going into formality and becoming licensed through this path, they will have to be following the food regulations. So to be able to vend now, it is that way currently, but to practice in a sidewalk vending zone, they would need to follow the health regulations. So definitely all about that.
I can see Commissioner Miller is showing concern on the direction of the conversation, but that's not something that we need to really follow on this meeting, but it's something that needs to be discussed as we flesh out this vending.
Definitely.
Thank you.
I do also want to throw in, if we do want to continue this, maybe off bringing the vendors in. They've been incredibly organized. This has been a very bottom-up effort on their part, and so I think they being part of any conversation we have, if we want to continue, that would be really wonderful.
Thank you, commissioners. Are there any other questions for Ms. Boback? Ally? Ally. I'm just trying to give you the proper level of respect, even though I call you
I
Ally
really
all the time.
appreciate it, Chairman. Yeah.
All right. Seeing none, then thank you for all that wonderful information tonight, and we will move to Moises Del Rosario from the mayor's office.
All right, can you hear me?
We sure can.
All right, good evening, everyone. It's great to be here tonight. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I do have some updates that I'd like to share. The first being for the 2021 budget engagement forums, which is a great opportunity for residents to express their budget priorities to Mayor Bowser. Today, we actually held our very first virtual senior budget engagement forum. The next forum is scheduled for Thursday, February 18th at 6 p.m. And I'll make sure to send you guys an email with the link. Additionally, the only other update I have is as it relates to vaccine. The demand for the vaccine remains high. We continue to advocate for the federal government to send more vaccines so that we can meet that demand and protect the lives of our residents and our workforce. The Biden administration committed to increasing the district's vaccine allocation by 15% for the next 3 weeks. Mayor Bowser and DC Health, led by Dr. LaQuandra Nesbitt, they recognized this announcement as a promising indicator of the new administration's commitment to increasing the supply of the COVID-19 vaccine. In general, as of today, 1 in 3 seniors have received at least 1 dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Moving forward, vaccination appointments will be released every Thursday at 9 a.m. to eligible residents in priority zip codes. And additional appointments will be released every Friday at 9 a.m. for all DC zip codes. Vaccination appointments additionally will be open every Monday at noon and 7 p.m. for individuals who work in person for a licensed child care provider or an independent or charter school that is located within the district. These appointments will be made through the One Medical portal, which staff are able to access through an email sent from OSSI to eligible workers, which provide registration information. And as of February 7th, One Medical had already vaccinated 2,000 child care and school staff. Additionally, as of now, there's an equal amount of appointments allotted for Thursday tomorrow and Friday of this week. 2,500 vaccination appointments will become available tomorrow for priority zip codes, and an additional 2,500 appointments will become available on Friday, February 12th for all DC residents. I did want to touch on a few improvements that have happened to the sites. I know that there's been a lot of concerns as just general access to the portal and the website. So the first one is just the site increased resources. So they moved to better infrastructure to support the numbers of users that were actually clicking on the site at one time, and to increase the speed of confirmation email delivery. Also, additionally, the website will now automatically hide vaccination sites where all appointments are booked. They also removed questions regarding insurance information to, further streamline the process for booking an appointment. Additionally, DC Health has also more than quadrupled the number of call takers who will be available in mornings when appointments become available. And on Thursday morning, more than 200 call takers will be available to help residents make appointments over the phone. The last update I just want to give is just to reduce crowds and to minimize the exposure of the virus. We really want to reiterate to not go to a vaccination site if you haven't registered for an appointment. Also important to note that as we progress through the vaccination rollout, those who have been vaccinated, it's important that we continue to practice good hygiene, practice social distancing, and of course, wash your hands and wear a mask. For our information related to COVID-19, you can visit coronavirus.dc.gov. There's also one thing that I did quickly want to mention, and that's the DC COVID Clinician Champions Program. The COVID-19 Clinicians Champion Program is a partnership between DC Health and the Medical Society of the District of Columbia to provide a cadre of medical experts who can serve as speakers during community meetings and events focused on COVID-19 and the importance of science behind the COVID-19 vaccine. Each physician has different areas of expertise and can address a number of topics related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And to request speakers, you can go to coronavirus.dc.gov/vaccine. So that's all the updates I have for you guys today. If there's any, ever an opportunity for MOKers to help assist, please feel free to reach out. It's been great touching bases with a lot of commissioners over the week. I'll also leave my contact information in the chat for the community. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Moises, but don't go anywhere. We have questions.
Absolutely.
I didn't see whose hand went up first, if it was Commissioner Bonneau or Brown. Was it Commissioner Brown? Okay, so we'll start with Commissioner Brown, then go Commissioner Bonneau.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I just wanted to thank you and thank the Mayor's Office, Department of Health, as well as the Office of the State Superintendent of Education in prioritizing childcare workers in the 1B category. Many commissioners on this ANC have written a support letter, sent it to our city officials advocating for that. Was really disheartened when we saw them removed, but glad to see them back into that category and recognized as essential workers.
Absolutely, thank you for that. And actually, Commissioner Miller and yourself were actually the person that put it on my on my radar as I saw it on social media, et cetera, just to make sure that I'm flagging it as much as I can for our leadership's awareness. So I'm very happy moving forward. They finally have access to getting vaccinated.
Thank you. No questions as a comment.
Adding our adult charter schools to that, I think, is especially for 1A, we have a lot of adult and non-traditional serving public charters. So seeing them added onto that was also a nice benefit.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Commissioner Bonneau.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Moises, for being here and for your service. So I had a question about the Senior Buddy program and just outreach in general, and was wondering, I know you and I had been in touch about print materials. I was excited to see a mailer that went out, I want to say 10 days ago now, or maybe 2 weeks, in English and Spanish, but unfortunately there was no phone number on the mailer. It was just a website. So I'm continuously concerned about seniors in our community receiving information. It's great to hear about this Clinicians Champions program, because I do think there are definitely some distrust and hesitancy issues that honestly, like one-on-one conversations are probably the best way to kind of handle some of that. And I think you're looking at 11, and when we're all here, 12 commissioners who can help with that. And so just wondering how, this might be a question to take back, but just how we can, implement the Senior Buddy program here in 1A, and then also just better partner with you and the executive to do more outreach to our seniors around vaccines.
Absolutely, and thank you for your question, Commissioner. Right now, currently, we don't have a volunteer platform here in Ward 1, but we are continuing to expand. We are continuing to explore innovative ways also to reach our neighbors. The Vaccine Buddy program, specifically in Ward 8, was definitely a success. Our neighbors are definitely very, very eager and very pleased and grateful that they were, able to get assistance in registering for the vaccine. So hopefully we'll be able to, transfer and do something similar of the sorts in other wards. There was definitely a specific and intentional outreach to Ward 8 because of the, just nature of making sure that the vaccine is distributed equally throughout all 8 wards in our city. But I'll definitely bring that back to leadership and see what guidance they can provide. I also just wanted to touch back on one of the points that was mentioned on last meeting. I do also, and I think I was talking to Commissioner Miller about it as well, and that's as it relates to COVID-19 and language access and just access to information in general. So we had the great opportunity to have DC Health present to MOKers during one of our boot camps. And I definitely mentioned it and I raised that concern as far as making sure that we're able to get that information to our residents, in a timely manner. So Director Henderson, I reached out to her in email. She'll be providing me with the most recent translations up to, where we are right now in the phase. So phase is 1, tier 2.
Okay. See, I was looking. Commissioner Love Wade, did you have a question? I'm not hearing anything from Commissioner Love Wade, though your hand is up.
Oh, sorry. I'm
It's
so
okay.
sorry. I was still on mute. I was wondering if you had an update or any additional information on the voluntary senior snow removal program and how effective it was over our last small snowstorm, and if our residents have to reapply at each snowstorm for assistance, our seniors.
Absolutely.
Are you familiar with the program?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your question. No, they don't have to reapply. It's already saved in Serve DC. So their information will be in the database. And that was actually one of the avenues that we used to identify and target our outreach in Ward 8 with the Vaccine Buddy program, using that same database for our seniors that needed assistance with their, their walkways, et cetera, being shoveled. I'll definitely reach out to DPW and our DDOT team for some additional guidance, and I'll follow up with you with email with the guidance that I received.
Okay, and the success of the so far success, if they have any assessment.
You say that one more time?
Okay, the success of the program, if they have any assessment on the success, how many homes seniors were actually assisted versus the number of requests, is what I'm trying to get to.
Yes, ma'am, I understand. Generally, I would assume that it was greatly impactful. I know that all MOKers were detailed and deployed to respond to the snow emergency. I don't know about the specific data, but I definitely can reach out and provide that to you once they get it to me.
I think it would be good PR because it was certainly helpful in our neighborhood. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I'll definitely reach out to see if I could get some data to see, what great benefit it had, and I'll definitely share that with the commission.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And Moises, I have a question for you. I know that this is important to Commissioner Gorpade. It's also something that Commissioner Hall has raised, even though he's not able to join us tonight, and to a lesser extent in my SMD. And it's just the amount of illegal dumping and the abuse of the public litter cans and just the deluge of household trash that's not making its way into the regular trash collection. Is there anything you can do? I know you've been in contact with DPW, but DPW seems, for lack of a better thing, someone pulled the fire alarm and they ran out of the bathroom without pulling up their pants. It's been a disaster from the last 8 months. So what can we do to get DPW to get rid of all of this excess trash that's occurring because everyone is working remotely and generating a lot more trash because they're in their homes 24/7?
Absolutely. And thank you for your question. And also it's added to the stress. I think this was mentioned in one of the email correspondences with the modifications to parking enforcement and, in other natures. But that being said, as it relates specifically to illegal dumping, 1A commissioners have definitely been very reliable with providing me information for illegal dumping hotspots, within their SMD. And that being said, tomorrow, the 11th, actually, we have our core team walk. So we'll be going to those hotspots to able to help, address what we can do to resolve those issues. Formally, just on our end to try to make sure that it isn't a Band-Aid and more so of a long-term solution. We'll be inquiring specifically about signages that we can install. Also just reassessing the the need for some of the public litter cans in our communities. If they're being misused, a lot of our community members feel as though it might be in the best interest to have those removed. So that's definitely something that we'll be talking with our DPW partners with. And also just because of the nature of the service requests, I think in total right now in 1A, I have about 17 or 18 service requests from individual commissioners in illegal dumping hotspots. Now, 9 times out of 10, when I go through the service requests, they start off as a missed trash collection. And when that missed trash collection doesn't happen, neighbors tend to add to that pile. So we'll be talking to DPW and our core team to try to talk about preventative measures, in those areas.
Well, and Moises, I'd just like to underscore that while it's unsightly and, unfortunate, because it's household waste, it does include a lot of food waste, and plastic bags are nothing for rats. It becomes a public health issue. It's not just unsightly, it's a significant public health issue on top of everything else that we're dealing with right now. Feeding vermin is unacceptable. I've included you on some of my emails to DPW, some of them a little less polite than others, but it's unfathomable to me that they can't get on a regular cycle. And what's worse is when they do collect overflowing litter cans, they still leave litter all around the can because they don't seem to have any concern about making sure that the can and the area around it is tidy after they've picked up the bags. And I know this is not just my SMD. I know this is everywhere in Columbia Heights and 14th Street and Irving Street, and it's across Ward 1, and it's probably across every dense neighborhood in the city. And that's why I raise it as a significant issue. It's not a matter of us being missed. It's a matter of DPW failing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, definitely take the, and luckily, as mentioned, I've had the opportunity to speak with individual commissioners or deal with individual commissioners on certain or specific constituent cases. And I'm well aware that it's definitely an issue that's happening throughout the ward, not only here in 1A. So I agree when you say that there's definitely a much more broader conversation that has to be held with DPW. Luckily, we have had our inspector, Elena Johnson, be pretty adamant about doing follow-up inspections just to be able to identify, violators or where the illegal dumping activity originates from. But that being said, I do agree, and I will take your comments back to leadership so they can help address.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Are there any other questions for our Ward 1 MOKR? Seeing none, thank you so much, Moises. I know we'll be talking before next month, but it's always good to have you here with everybody.
Likewise, I'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
Sure. We can now move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda has 5 items on it. The first is approval of the prior minutes, which were January 2021. Commissioner Rybarczyk has previously sent those around. The second item is reimbursement of and authorization for communications expenses to Commissioner Rybarczyk for the Zoom webinar invoice and up to 440 plus tax for an annual Zoom Pro account. Just so people know, it's on the agenda because we're only allowed to pay by checks, and ANCs are not allowed to pay by credit cards or other convenient methods that normal people get to use. The third item on the consent agenda is, again, reimbursement and authorization of communications expenses to Commissioner Gorpade for Canva Pro account that would be for use of all commissioners. The fourth item is reimbursement of ANC 1A business card printing expenses to Commissioner Gorpade for 250 business cards. And the last is ANC 1A request to remove a street tree at 3547 Georgia Avenue Northwest. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Motion to accept the agenda by consent.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. We will now move on to official business, which has 2 items. The first is a discussion and consideration of a Parkview Historic District, which I will introduce. And the second is the authorization to file a language access complaint on behalf of ANC 1A, which Commissioner Miller will shepherd. So let's get into the first item. I think what would be helpful is, just wondering if I could share my screen to show the district outline, presuming everybody can see that. So on the agenda for discussion tonight is this area outlined in the northeast corner of Ward 1. The section includes 150 row houses constructed between 1909 and 1917, along with 2 properties along Georgia Avenue, Fisherman Amid Church, which is a former York Theater, a business residence, which has 8 apartments on the upper floor, and connected to the south by the Parkview Playground or Recreation Center and the Parkview School. The playground and the school are currently already recognized historic landmarks, and those boundaries include the entirety of the properties. Just because this is a question that has come up a couple of times, including them in a historic district does not create any additional oversight or review in the permitting process for those projects. Historic landmarks actually have a higher standard than contributing buildings in a historic district. With that said, they were included as District of Columbia properties without additional outreach to the management of the properties, as it does not increase or add anything that the 2 properties don't already have to go through. With regards to the housing stock, we did include a flyer to all of the residences in that area before the January 19th ZPP meeting for discussion. It was poorly attended. So we then put it in a newsletter I distributed 10 days ago and distributed to every residential property within that section to let them know about the meeting tonight. Again, for discussion, we have not had a lot of feedback thus far. I suspect we will get some additional feedback tonight, which will be very helpful. Thus far, we have 3 property owners thus far that are not in support and 14 that are. Again, that's not a strong consensus, but I feel that this is perhaps the start of a conversation that would take many, many months and may not eventually, it may not lead to the establishment of a district, even if we were to vote to file a nomination. I say that because, well, a nomination for a historic district could go before the Historic Preservation Review Board as quickly as 5 to 6 months, which is still 5 to 6 months of sustained outreach that needs to occur. One historic district has been on the pending list for 13 years. There's no way to gauge how quickly something may or may not go. I will also put out there that if the ANC were to nominate this, the ANC can also has the options to request that it be deferred to a future date, and it has the authority to withdraw anything that it nominates. So up until any scheduled hearing date, the ANC could always choose to pull it back. Nothing that we would consider tonight has to be permanent or needs to be considered permanent. I do want to briefly mention why this geography was chosen, particularly with the housing stock and the Georgia Avenue frontage. These were all constructed or designed by the same architect and the same builder at a period of time. in a contiguous way. Yet if you were to walk down these streets, there's a great variety of styles. There's a great variety of housing types. They're all row houses, but they're all composed rows, meaning when you stand across the street and look at them, they're mirror images. They're like butterflies or a Rorschach test, which makes them more susceptible to incongruent changes than compatible changes. It's not like every house on the same row is cookie cutter, so you can find a cookie cutter solution for all of them. So it needs a little bit more consideration that frequently speculative developers just don't bring. So it would be helpful in that conversation. But also, it really captures an interesting time in the development of Kennedy Brothers, who are the builders. They're also, I believe they also did the Argyle in Mount Pleasant. Edgar Kennedy is also the Kennedy of the Kennedy Warren. So he is a notable architect. Again, a very notable building that's been on the historic landmark list for many, many years. And this captures a really interesting period in the development of Kennedy Brothers and Sonneman, the architect, because the houses start on, if you look at the age, they start on Rock Creek Church Road, and they're 3-story houses that are 40 feet high. Perhaps a little bit more plain, but they are houses very similar to what you would find in Mount Pleasant. And then as the years go by in their development, the houses start to step down from 3-story houses to 2.5-story houses. And then they start to incorporate garages as personal automobile ownership goes up, and in demand for a place to store the cars actually starts impacting the architecture. And so in total, it kind of captures about a 9-year period showing their evolution in the design of row houses that you just don't see in other contiguous developments. So I also think that it's important to include the school and the rec center, simply because this area, while it's the northern tip of the neighborhood, similar to the Bloomingdale neighborhood, which is now a historic district, this is a part of the city where blockbusting was occurring, where African-American neighbors were challenging restrictive covenants to move into a part of the city that were denied to them in the past. And these homes became homes for newer Black residents at about the same time, a little bit before and a little bit after, as the Supreme Court was striking down restrictive covenants. And as a result, you get interesting things like the Parkview Playground. While it was not the first playground to be integrated or opened, it was where the fight started. And it started there because the neighborhood had changed. And so that's where the fight started. And while it's not part of the proposed district across the street, Firehouse 24, the old Petworth station, which is now a chiller plant for the Metro. In 1954, it was among the first 5 integrated fire department stations. And that's because of the character of the neighborhood. So I think architecturally, it's a gem. It's a little rough around the edges, but it's a gem. It has good history, social history, as far as the development of the city, and documents striking down racial covenants in part as part of the broader history. So I do think it has a lot going for it. Now, I will say too, as far as historic districts can go, I know many people can be concerned with impacts of cost or impacts on future changes or developments. As I noted, there are 150 residences here. We have made 2 passes and attempts to do comprehensive outreach. We recognize more outreach needs to occur. And I will say that regardless of the outcome tonight, that outreach will occur. I think that whatever the outcome is tonight, a mailing needs to go out to every property owner, and outside of just flyering or sticking it in the door. I recognize that there are some houses that are being rented, and so we need to take into account that. But I will say that the houses on the block bordered by Rock Creek Church Road, Water Street, Quebec Place, and Georgia Avenue, as well as the houses on the south side of Rock Creek Church Road on the 700 block, or excuse me, the 600 block. Those houses are currently 3-story houses that are 40 feet high. That's the maximum allowed by zoning. So as far as future changes, they're already banned from additions by the zoning regulations. They, but nothing restricts them, regardless of historic district or zoning. They are allowed to be converted into 2-unit flats if the property owner so chooses. Nothing takes that away. Similarly, for the 2.5-story houses, there may be some extra processes, or there may be some restrictions with regards to upper additions, but nothing removes their capacity to be converted into 2 living units. That's still by right. And some of those houses are already converted into English basements and living units up above, so they could still do that. With that, it's probably easiest for me to answer questions and have discussion. What I think would be helpful, I'm going to stop sharing this, but what I think would be helpful is to open it up to community members who have been here tonight, hear their statements, hear what concerns they have, hear if they support it or if they oppose it, and then we can incorporate all of that into our discussion, if that makes sense. So with that, I will then again open it up to members of the community. If you wish to speak, please either raise your hand if you're on the Zoom meeting, or press *9 if you are on the phone. Okay, I see we have, there we go. Yes, phone number ending in 119. Welcome.
Is that for me?
It is for you, sir.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, commissioners and participants. My name is Leo Clark, a longtime resident of the Rock Creek Church Road block between Georgia and Park Place. I am very, very, very concerned about this proposal for creating a historic district to include my home and my neighbors' homes. I have enough impact of the negative aspects of commercial activity on Georgia Avenue affecting me that you never feel on the Park Road side of this block. There are severe problems, even as we speak, dealing with the issues of this commission supporting the development of the Sweet Mango Cafe location. One would have to live here to understand how impacted we are. The drugs, the traffic, the lack of trash being picked up, the trash cans being included in the fencing. I mean, it is a plethora of issues related to what we have to suffer because we are nearer to Georgia Avenue. So I don't want to consume this meeting, but I want to make it known I'd be vehemently resisting any such consideration right now. This is something that should take a very long discussion and a very involved discussion with the owners of these properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Are there any other attendees wishing to speak? I see Ms. Sorcerer would like to speak. Hi,
Hi,
Sarah.
Kent. Hi. You were at the SIP meeting. I think it was in 2019 when the school raised this issue around the fence on the outdoor classroom. The school is a historic site. I recognize that they have kind of a higher standard than a historic district would have, but they've had a lot of trouble just replacing their fence and putting in like a tasteful wrought iron fence. They actually applied, it was rejected. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to how that would restrictions like that would impact property owners if the historic district designation was extended to cover all the houses in the North Parkview area the way that the application dictates.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And I do remember discussion about the fence coming up. I was not aware that an application had gone in. I wish I'd known a little bit more about the urgency so I could have talked to the preservation staff. And maybe that's something we can address again. But to your point, the Parkview playground and the school are both currently listed as historic landmarks, which means they have a much higher level of review because they stand alone as individual properties that are historic. The bar is much less in a historic district. First of all, nothing would ever be required of a property owner to retroactively remove or change anything that had been changed over time that may or may not be considered compatible. Historic districts are forward-looking, not backward-looking. They kind of snap a chalk line on the paper at that time and review future significant changes, not minor changes. So part of the process would be, and what we would need to do is if the nomination went forward, the Historic Preservation Office would develop a set of design guidelines that could be available to homeowners in advance so that they could see what would be considered significant, what's not considered significant, what they would think is appropriate for change. And it would outline things like window replacements. There was a time, and I want to be clear about this, there was a time in the past when the Preservation Office was far more rigid with window replacements, saying that because it's historic preservation, if you have original windows, they want original windows to be maintained or new windows to appear to be original windows. That's no longer the case. And I think a significant change occurred maybe 2 or 3 years ago when the Kingman Park Historic District was created over by RFK Stadium. What they realized is in that neighborhood, the vast majority of the original windows had been replaced long ago. And so it's not a requirement that new windows mirror or mimic or attempt to be historic in character. In looking at our neighborhood, or at least the houses within the district proposed, similarly, most of the original windows have been replaced long ago. So it would be one of those instances where I think we would want to work with the Preservation Office. We would want to review the design guidelines. We would want to find something that's balanced, that kind of preserves the character, but doesn't provide extra burden for the community members as much as possible. And I think it would be an area where the design guidelines or the draft guidelines are in recent years have been done in advance of designation. So it's one of those situations where if we didn't like the design guidelines, we could just decide that it's too rigid for our needs and either find a way to negotiate them into something that is compatible, or that would be an opportunity where we might consider to defer or withdraw once we know what they actually consider to be appropriate. I would also like to add, because I don't think, I mean, I've shared this with the commissioners, But if this were to become a district, one thing that we would also want to pursue is working with our council member to amend the preservation law that would allow this historic district to be included in the historic homeowner grant program. Currently, the historic homeowner grant program is available for homeowners in 15 historic districts. In Ward 1, if you live in the LaDroit Park Historic District or the Mount Pleasant Historic District, you are eligible. If you live over in Cleveland Park, you are not. There's a reason for that. The homeowner grants are targeted for low and middle income families. And depending upon how much income you make, there's a tiered system where, for instance, if you're a family of two, I believe making under $58,000 a year, you would be eligible for up to $25,000 non-tax grant with no matching funds. Once you go above that income level, there's a percentage of matching funds. I think it's 25%. And then once you reach another tier, there's 50%. But the goal is to make funding available that doesn't have to be paid back and that does not need to be taxed, so that families who are living in historic districts can actually repair roofs, porches, replace windows, and maintain their homes. So I think that's pretty substantial. I'm not aware of any other program right now, and if anyone does know of a program, please let me know. But I would really love to be able to get funding available for my neighbors that could use some funding for capital projects. I'm not sure. I know one question that was asked from one commissioner. I do know that about 10 to 12 grants are given every year. And based on the information I have from the manager of the program, it doesn't sound like they've run out of money ever. If there have been grants that have not been approved, but it's not for lack of funds. I'll put it that way. So I think that would be a really nice benefit. But in essence, reviewing things down to the fence level in a historic district with contributing buildings. And there's a distinction between a contributing building and a historic building in its own right. So with contributing buildings, the level of review is not as high, and there's a lot more that would be permitted. And I think that is something that would need to be worked out in the design guidelines with the Office of Planning. They've tried very hard over the last couple of years to listen to communities and strike a balance, which they had not done previously. I see we have a question from Taylor Wiley.
Hi, good evening. My name is Taylor Wiley. I'm the Director of Operations at Bruce Monroe Elementary School at Parkview. Thank you for having this meeting tonight. I have a couple things. So Sarah brought up a good point with the fencing, and I'm trying to understand a little bit more about what kind of priority these historic houses, especially the residentials, will be able to get once this changes. Because at least at the school, knowing that we have been a historic site for years, there's been a few different hurdles that we've had to go through so far. So there's the fencing issue. That was one thing. We've also had, after the wrought iron idea was not allowed, the contractors, for safety and security, they had to put up fencing. So then they put up, chain link fencing that doesn't look great at all. But then there was nothing that kind of came back afterwards and said, hey, that's not what should be put on a historic site. Same thing with like our HVAC upgrades and remodeling. We've had this bright white conduit that's right in the front of the building. That's a huge eyesore. And now we've had new conduit put in there right next to it. And so we have empty conduit next to brand new conduit, all of it bright white on this beautiful brick building. It just seems like an odd choice. And I know that a lot of these contractors have to go through the historic preservations to make sure that they're doing it correctly. And then I know that I've spoken with Commissioner Ray about this, but we had a neighbor talking about trash pickup at the back corner alley. You know, we're just been working together to try to get you know, just one trash receptacle back there to help with that trash pickup. And I know the other resident down Georgia Avenue was talking about trash pickup. Like what kind of benefits are residents going to be getting to be able to help with cleaning up the areas, to be able to help them support like the beautification of their houses and properties. Just coming from experience from the school, just seems like there's some benefits and some hurdles, and it seems very difficult to navigate.
I'll say this, and I would love to have a one-on-one conversation with you following this as well. You're right in regards with everything. There's a trade-off, so fully recognize that. I will say that with the school project, the first contractors you had weren't great. And I recall that they were removed and the project was completed by another set of contractors because the first one wasn't really going through all the process they should have been going through. So I wouldn't presume that like the white pipe in front of the building was necessarily approved. I know that the wall for the parking lot only got the brick facing on it after Commissioner Ray and myself raised a ruckus downtown because the preservation office was not fully aware or informed of what that was before it was constructed. So the first contractor did cut corners that should not have been cut. And where I would say I'm disappointed is that it's district-owned property. It was a district project, and the district should have been on top of it, and they weren't. So there's that. Also, I know this is off the topic of preservation, but I'd also like to talk to you about the possibility of getting a mirror installed to make it safer for cars leaving the parking lot and turning onto Newton, which I think is also something the school originally asked for.
Yes, that was actually the thing that I missed. It was a bullet point that I missed. That was through DDOT. We've been trying to get a convex mirror on both sides of that alleyway because it is a blind turn for pedestrians.
Yeah, so I've had like 8 months of my life sucked up trying to get you those mirrors. So we definitely need to have a conversation to see how we can make that happen, because I feel like I've been playing rope-a-dope with DDOT.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Not seeing any other comments, so we will move to commissioners. Are there any commissioners who have comments or questions? Commissioner Clark.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So some of the residents already talked about this, but I do think that right now we only have 14 neighbors, or about 10% offering feedback. So I do believe that having a revocable application with appropriate notice may actually get more community involvement. I do like the fact that we can do that, because I'm thinking, just like we didn't have an orange placard yet for a zoning case. I think once this goes out on appropriate notice, I think we'll get more neighbors involved. And so I'm thankful for that process and the postponement. So I also do like the fact that we can get potentially some grants to help fix the houses up. So I've been swayed, basically, because I think we have time to make a decision and get more community involvement. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. And I will say that what you just stated is something that it's come to my mind too, that I think, as I've indicated, we had a community conversation about this 5 years ago, and it didn't go anywhere at that time because we got some feedback, certainly not consensus. some of the development stresses in our area make this an appropriate time to have this conversation again. And even though we've done noticing twice, we still haven't gotten a lot of feedback. And it could be simply a matter of, since we've had this conversation before, some residents may not feel that it has legs, and therefore why maybe like not engaging. Others clearly are. So I think that's something to consider as well. That, like I said, regardless of where we end up tonight, I do think, like, let's just say, should we vote to file the nomination? Then I think that the ANC, meaning me taking the leadership on this, needs to send a letter to every single property owner, once again, letting them know where we are, letting them know what the process is, letting them know that this isn't a done deal, letting them know that there may be some opportunities, and continuing to do outreach, education, and engagement so that we can get to a point where there might be enough consensus to move it forward. Commissioner Brown?
Yes, Commissioner Bass, thank you so much. I appreciate the additional outreach that you are suggesting to do. I think that that would be a great way to not only, one, make sure that residents are notified properly, but to offer up ways where they can receive some education about it. And hopefully HPO has some promotional materials to go out to residents to really kind of fully understand what the impacts are and what that means for them as homeowners. And I appreciate the outreach that you gave to me, just to kind of really kind of understand some of the concerns within your SMD for neighbors. And I know one of my concerns is around gentrification, but I'm also pleased to see the grants available to low income and moderate homeowners, and really would also encourage not only outreach through the ANC, but also from HPO to make sure that residents are available of these grants. And I know that there's, one, I think you and I talked about this question, but I really want to help understand the utilization of these grants and seeing if there's potentially, especially in Ward 1, an opportunity to maybe lobby the council during budget season, or, explore like budget oversight, performance oversight, how we could see how promotion is being handled through HPO to help residents really understand that the grants are out there, but also if there are any hiccups and kinks in our system in terms of the application process and residents determining, getting that eligibility determined, if there's any issues there in receiving the grants.
Yeah. And I think that there's a couple of things that need to fall into place. After tonight, need to start that conversation with Councilmember Nadeau and make sure that there's an avenue there to make that legislative amendment. It has happened, like it happened for Kingman Park. This is not an unusual thing, but it doesn't happen automatically. So we definitely need to make sure that that piece is in place. I think it's important to make sure that any guidelines coming from HPO are in sync with the community's needs and in place. So I think that through the process, there's a lot of outreach that needs to occur there, not just to residents, but to our government partners and to our agency heads, and to make sure that they're getting things in place so that we can find a way to manage growth in the neighborhood that's compatible and supportive of the neighbors who live here. And if none of those pieces fall into place, then my recommendation would be at that time that should the Preservation Office want to schedule a hearing, that we ask them not to. They are very happy to not schedule hearings when you ask them. I've done it on other properties. I can assure you that the last thing the Preservation Office wants is a contentious hearing. So if more time leads to more consensus, they're happy to delay it. One thing too, I just want to kind of throw out there is I don't have hard numbers on how many residents would be eligible for the grants. I think in a way it would probably be scary if I knew my neighbors' income levels. That might be an overreach. So, but I will say I do see a number of houses that could use some repair, and I suspect have deferred maintenance due to having to make difficult choices with a fixed income. And it could be as much as, and I'm just spitballing here, but when I think about the houses on some of the blocks, it could be up to 20% of the households. So, this is an opportunity where we could be providing some service. And again, there are trade-offs, but it is an opportunity to provide some service to Native Washingtonians and long-term Washingtonians before, and I'll say this is exactly what happened with the two contentious cases on Manor Place, where the homes were in such a state of disrepair that an attractive offer from a developer to buy the property resulted in long-term Washingtonians leaving their neighborhood because that was a payday for them versus staying in the neighborhood because the homes just required a capital outlay that they just didn't have. So it is an opportunity where some neighbors would have a stronger ability to stay in their community.
Well, my concern, Chairman, is that it's been a decade since we first broached filing for historic recognition. And that time, development has, of course, skyrocketed. And so my concern is the longer we delay, the more at risk we are putting the properties that the neighborhood that we're trying to maintain. I'm so sad about the destruction on my particular block, these beautiful woodland homes that have been the whole block has been pillaged. And if we can do anything to protect other neighborhoods from the type of destruction and irresponsibility that we have from some of the developers, I think it would be in the best interest of the homeowners. And I think we should also make it crystal clear to everyone who is concerned that this in no way impacts what they can do within the boundaries of their property, within their four walls, and that they can add space where zoning permits for a little expansion, that they can convert to 2 units, and that they can really improve the home that they're in substantially. It also gives it gives you a little bit more protection for your whole neighborhood, I believe, to have the district. So because we supported it twice in the past, I just think that the more time, the way we get real action is if we file the application and then it goes through the formal process of bringing the public in, where their concerns will be heard by those people who are making the actual decisions. So if there's no more discussion, if I am the last person, I would like to make a motion, because it is getting rather late in the evening, that I move that we file the application for the historic district.
Point of order, there are other commissioners and committee members who have questions.
But after I make my motion, then there's room for discussion. I believe that's the parliamentary procedure. Make the motion and then you open it for discussion. Is that correct?
Well, you've made a motion. Before I ask for a second, let's hear the other questions, and then we can move to a second. That way you don't have to take your motion back, but it hasn't been seconded yet. So Commissioner Bonneau.
Thanks for the discussion and Chairman, for the various resources that you've sent our way. I appreciate the conversation and will probably be abstaining tonight because I just am not hearing like from community members directly for a desire for this to move forward. And I understand kind of like, I just think our actions matter and what we put, you know, ANC 1A on matters. And so by nominating this, some of it is probably me still learning the process of like how we could later rescind it, or like what would be the metric by which, you know, X number of community members said they were against it, that we would rescind it. So I just feel like tonight it still feels like we're rushing it without adequate input at the community level. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Are there other commissioners who would like to speak? Okay, not seeing.
No, Dieter is.
Oh, Commissioner. Okay, Commissioner Lehman Morales.
Yeah, I just mostly just want to echo what Commissioner Burnett was just saying. I actually do also plan to abstain, not for any concerns necessarily that I may have with the proposal itself. I just think, like Commissioner Burnett said before me, that I would really appreciate to just hear back more feedback from the community members that would be impacted by this decision. I know that the proposal or the decision to file can be reversible, can be withdrawn up to the moment that we actually get a hearing, and that's fine. And I think we should, you know, should the commission vote to go ahead and do so, that's totally fine. I just do second those concerns that Commissioner Burnett said or shared about the very little feedback we've gotten from residents that would be impacted by the decision. I think, you know, I would hate for our decision to be interpreted by residents as us imposing something on them that they did not necessarily want or know about, or any other variety of reasons. So I think if we, you know, put more effort into outreach and ensuring that they're aware of the pros and cons of this decision, and then they themselves as a community can come to us and say, well, this is what we want to do, we want to proceed, or we don't want you to do this on our behalf, etc. Then I would feel more comfortable, you know, making a decision whether yes or no to proceed this filing. And the last thing I'll say is, I know it's getting late, and I know that certain people, you know, this might be late for them, but I think this sort of discussion is very robust, and I think we do need to exhaust all debate as much as we can. I don't think we don't need to rush it, like Commissioner Burnett said, but we also, I think we should take our time with this, as you know, there would be a lot of residents impacted by this.
Sorry, Commissioner Rabarchik, you have your hand up.
Wow. Thank you all. I know I had let Chairman Bass know that I appreciate, you know, it's very apparent the amount of time and effort that he put into the application, going through many pages of histories of his, you know, of his neighborhood. But I echo again what Commissioners Bonneau and Lehman Morales said regarding the time frame we're working within. You know, I would love to see from HPO or the Historic Preservation Review Board, you know, in writing that we're able to withdraw an application if it were to move forward. And, you know, something that we haven't discussed tonight is the property values and how a historic district affects property values. And I know before, our commission has, you know, made statements supporting affordable housing. And it does worry me that we haven't addressed how property prices in historic districts interact. I know there are lots of academic studies out there. I know there are lots of academic studies looking at DC and how historic districts in general, newer research has shown that they've raised property values, which for folks who are in their homes right now, you know, it's probably great unless you can't pay your property taxes. And for folks who are looking to move in, you know, I get concerned that, you know, it'll just be another factor of the many factors and many inputs that have already raised housing prices throughout the district. So I hope that's something that we all consider. I hope that's something that, you know, I would wish that, ZPP committee could take a closer look at that and come out and, put that into part of the conversation, because I don't know if that's part of the conversation when this is considered within HPO. And, I would really hate to see this not explored as deeply as it could, because I think this is probably one of the more, in terms of things that we voted on in a while, this has a lot of impact, and I would hate for us to rush through it.
Well, I appreciate that. I will say that some of the answers we want probably don't exist yet. I know that, again, it's not the District of Columbia, but New York and Chicago within the last year or two have been looking at historic districts to stave and slow down gentrification. And that's efforts too new for any studies to have been done. I think in DC, the real estate market is just so hot with developers that whether it's a historic district or whether it's someone overpaying for a house because they want to slap on a third story to get 3 living units that they're selling for $650 to $750, $1,000, both of those raise property taxes. Which one raises property taxes more? I don't know. But I know that the pressures of development where families seeking to buy housing can't compete with cash offers, that's also a real thing here in the district. So maybe there's studies out there. I don't have them yet, if they are. And I suspect that, this reminds me of some of my attorneys at work when they call and say, I want that treatise on such and such. And after I spend 5 hours, get back to them and tell them that it doesn't exist. They're like, well, but that would be very helpful when someone should write it. I'm like, yeah, that someone's you. That's a real life experience, by the way. So yeah, I'm not going to say that a historic district won't contribute to rising housing prices, but compared to the amount of development going on in 1A, I would be surprised if it's not at least on par with some of the development we're seeing. And I will say too, another contributing factor to gentrification in a way is I've had some neighbors end up moving out because they don't have access to capital to fix their houses. And a go-to place for some families is reverse mortgage. And I've never seen anyone in a reverse mortgage come out of it on the right side. So if it's an option of getting displaced because you're, in your 80s and you decided that you would fix up your house, maybe it's not a big concern to the senior, but I have seen properties that have been considered heir properties not go to the children as they assumed it would. And so I've seen the next generation not get to live where they thought they always would. So I'll just leave it at that. There's no right answer here on that issue.
And I also do want to flag, I love hearing about the grants, but as someone who works with district agencies in charge of dispersing grants out, I'd be really concerned about looking at that as some type of very small silver bullet to help, you set up to maybe 20% of the homes in the neighborhood.
But a bullet is a bullet.
No, money is better than no money, but I'm concerned when you look at the budget right now as being $250,000. That's, you could be getting 10 grants out of that. I would hate for us to be placing a lot of hope into that for helping the neighborhood in the long run.
Well, and that's why I say that I think it's on us to get the answers we need before anything would ever go to a hearing, right? So, because the process takes so long, just to even get scheduled for a hearing, and part of that is so that the preservation staff has an opportunity to start looking at the merits of the case and doing their research. I don't have a problem personally with filing it and having the preservation staff do their job and do research, even if ultimately it's not needed, than to in some ways kick the can and have them never get started. Again, I've had nominations that have been delayed and withdrawn. So it's one of those rare instances where the Preservation Office actually gives ANCs some deference and great weight, and they have been trying to give us great weight, unlike some agencies. I don't have any doubt that if we asked for this not to go forward, that they wouldn't comply with our request.
And sorry for raising one more question. Can you confirm, just casually reading, does the review board take into consideration economic distress of the neighborhood or affordability of the neighborhood when they're considering whether or not to designate the historic district?
The short answer would be no. They're looking at neighborhood, they're looking at architectural integrity. A good example would be when Berry Farm was nominated. They actually reduced it to a much smaller section. But the Historic Preservation Office actually recommended not designating Berry Farm because the architectural integrity, one, was not there. The buildings were in such a state of distress and had been altered significantly over the years. And so the preservation staff said no. And then the HPRB decided to move forward with a district, but they reduced it down to a representative, I think, 4 buildings, so that they could have the smallest possible impact on the redevelopment while still having something representative of the community, which was supporting it. Of course, not surprising, the community was largely supporting it in some ways to stop the redevelopment, but depending upon who you are. So that there was some negotiation, but the borders were significantly reduced. Same thing happened with Kingman Park. The borders were reduced from what the original application was, so that it was in alignment with the core importance of the nomination and not just including everything into the boundaries that have been proposed. And it's not uncommon for the preservation staff to reduce boundaries, and it's not uncommon for people to submit larger boundaries because the preservation staff can make them smaller, but they can't make them grow.
And then my last question, I'm sorry, Commissioner Lee Morales, before I forget, I did catch part of the ZPP meeting. Can you explain to folks who may not have seen, how does 616 Quebec Place factor into this discussion?
616 Quebec is in the district, or in the proposed district. They're asking for a 3rd-story addition. As it's designed, it would not be compatible if it were within the district. I do think that it would be helpful to, honestly, to have a conversation with the architect. It would be helpful if we had something filed, even though filing does not prevent issuing permits. Unlike a landmark nomination, where once something's filed, it's treated as if it had been approved, even though the board had not heard it. Historic districts are the complete opposite. Filing a historic district nomination imposes no additional restraints or restrictions on anybody until it is eventually heard and supported. So it could provide some leverage in the conversation, but it wouldn't stop the project unless it had been approved probably 2.5 months before the permits were to be approved in the normal course of business by DCRA.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions? If not, Commissioner Commissioner Lehman Morales.
Yes, real quick. Chairman Mays, noting Commissioner Clark's question about tabling this matter. Would a motion to table this matter for a later time be of higher precedence at this time, given Commissioner Lovewade's previous motion?
Well, since she made a motion, it either needs a second. If it doesn't get a second, it fails. If it does get a second, we can vote on it. Or if Commissioner Love-Wade were interested in withdrawing the motion, there could be a motion to table it. But she did have a motion.
No, I'm not interested in withdrawing the motion. I still maintain that after almost 10 years of waiting and pushing back, every 2 years, incidentally, we do get a new class of commissioners, and I understand absolutely the learning curve. And I understand your reluctance to move on this issue right now. And I also understand your the purpose and the privilege of an abstaining vote. But I do think that this is of importance enough that we move it forward. Our developers in this city are not waiting. They are moving forward at post haste. Manor Place should be a great example of what the developers can do and what zoning will do to accommodate the developers. So I have not withdrawn my motion. I would like a second.
And I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Is there any additional discussion before we vote? Okay,
Oh, and of course, always the nay vote. I did not mean to preclude that, but I had heard a couple of extensions.
Okay. How do you want it, Commissioner Rabarchik? How would you like to do the vote?
Chair, I would request a roll call vote.
Okay, I'm agreeable to that.
Actually, one more question, Chairman.
Sure.
Just to clarify for people, the new commissioners, the abstention does not count as a no vote. So if everyone abstains and one person votes yes, the motion passes unanimously, just so you know.
Yes, that is correct, Commissioner Clark. All right, Commissioner Rabarchik, would you like to take the roll?
Yeah, so this is on the vote to support the submission of the nomination. So Commissioner Bonneau.
No.
Commissioner Lehman Morales.
I vote no.
Commissioner Rabarchik, no. Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
Commissioner Wood.
No.
Commissioner Gorpade.
No.
Commissioner Bass.
Yes.
Commissioner Ray.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Love-Wade.
Yes.
And Commissioner Clock.
No.
Okay, so the
motion fails 5 to 6. Yeah, 5 to 6 to 0. Is that right?
correct. Yes, the motion fails. 5-6-0. 5 yay, 6 nay, 0 abstentions.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to the last item, which is authorization to file a language access complaint on behalf of ANC 1A. Commissioner Miller.
Great. I'm going to try to keep this under 5 minutes. This is really just an extension of ongoing issues we've had. We did draft a letter in January. Not only was there not a response, but there were no corrections or curing of the identified problems. So this is really just sort of a next step. It's an escalating it with the Office of Human Rights, who is tasked with monitoring and investigating public complaints regarding language access violations. So I'm asking that on behalf of our community, that the ANC file that non-compliance, and that we also ask to have that review and that inquiry expedited, given the issue of safety and the well-being for our residents.
All right. Is there any discussion? Sorry, I got stuck in chat for some reason. Is there any further discussion on this issue? All right, is there a motion?
I move that we accept, the resolution giving me permission to file a non-compliance with the Language Access Act of 2004 on behalf of ANC 1A, and more importantly, on behalf of our community.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Well, this brings us to the end of the agenda. So is there a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
I would just like to remind everyone before we adjourn of the meeting, of the town hall meeting, and to thank Commissioner Gorbaday for her assistance in the flyer and anyone else who may have helped her. Thank you very much, and I will be in touch with each of you.
Okay, with that, all those in favor of ending the meeting, say aye.
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 At 9:58, the meeting comes to an end. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Night all.